Okay, well, thanks for all of you who are here. We got a lot of people that are going to enjoy the recording of this, I guess, John. I've gotten probably 8 or 10 people wanting to make sure that they're going to be able to have it through that uh, method. So this is just a really brief introduction to a much more fulsome report. But as most of you may know, the EDC late this in January established a subcommittee called the Business Environment Committee, and we're in general terms trying to figure out different ways that we might be able to enhance the economic development in the town and village. And John and I, in the process of thinking this in a general terms, thought that it would be great to determine what communities out there anywhere in the United States that are somewhat similar to Woodstock have done that have had significant success in economic development. How to figure out how to find them, then try to figure out how to find out what they did, and maybe even talk to the movers and shakers in those areas, which triggered a thought in our minds about using the mentoring program at Williams College, which is a program that it connects students at the college who are interested in doing projects with alumni who have projects for them, and with the idea that the alumni get the benefit of really talented people to help them out, and hopefully the students get the benefit of some mentoring from people that have sort of been doing, the real life kinds of things. So we posted a project on the mentoring website at Williams College. We were fortunate to have a number of people apply. We got 3 fantastic people here who you'll get to know. And John and I met with them 5 or 6 times. They have come up with a very high quality, we believe, high quality report. They've done some really thorough research. They've got some well-considered ideas and suggestions. I think that it's very good for us from the EDC point of view anyway, to have an idea of what other communities that have had success are doing. And this is just a tremendous way to get insights for that. I just would add, these 3 students who you'll meet now are getting no course credit for this. They aren't being compensated for it. They're just doing it because they're interested and intellectually curious people who wanted to work on this project. So I applaud them for all that effort. I think the report is, the presentation is going to be about 40 to 45 minutes. And after that, it'd be best if nobody asks questions until they are done. And then I think John's going to be the moderator for Q&A after that. So that's sort of what the plan is. So from there, we have Hassan and April and Sam. Take it over.
Thank you, Larry. Hi, all. First of all, we just wanted to thank you for joining us in today's presentation. And before moving on, we just wanted to introduce ourselves. My name is Hassan. I'm a sophomore at Williams College, and I'm doing a double major in history and economics.
Hello, everyone. It's nice to make all of your virtual acquaintances. My name is Sam Riley. I am also a sophomore from Williams College, and I'm from Lakeland, Florida, a town in Central Florida, and I will be planning on majoring in political economy.
Hi, everyone. It's great to see such a great turnout. My name is April Lee, and I'm also a sophomore. I'm from San Jose, California, and I'm studying computer science and economics at Williams.
Yeah, before delving into our project, we just wanted to give you an overview of the objective of our research that we conducted. So the purpose of our project was essentially to identify towns that were similar in size, location, and demographic to Woodstock, and to understand what kind of economic development policies did these towns implement that could also be viable opportunities for Woodstock, essentially, for long-term economic growth.
Our approach to figuring out exactly how to this objective began by conducting general background research on the internet, searching for towns across the United States that fit our selected criteria, having a similar size, location, and demographic as Woodstock's. From our research, we chose 16 towns that fit that criteria. We then conducted a more in-depth analysis into each of these 16 towns and their economic development initiatives to find common themes between each of the towns. After identifying these common themes, we reached out to all 16 of the towns and were able to interview 8 different prominent figures within each town's economic development programs. The point of these interviews was to uncover exactly how to implement a lot of the initiatives that we had researched.
So here's a list of the 16 towns that we chose for our case studies and their populations. Not all the towns are as small as Woodstock, but in general, they are all relatively compact rural communities across the United States that match Woodstock in either economy, geography, or regional characteristics. And regardless of size, they all implemented activities and plans that are applicable and scalable to a town of Woodstock's size.
Yeah, this brings on to the synthesis for our research, which is essentially 5 themes that we highlighted across our study. So the first theme is looking into small business and entrepreneurial support, which is essentially about resources, programs, and competitions to help spur and incentivize new business growth within Woodstock. The second theme that we highlighted is downtown revitalization, which is understanding the role of aesthetic and facade improvements and concentrating activities within the downtown to both attract and retain tourists for longer periods of time. The third theme that we highlighted is diversification. And across our study, we found out that it is really important to diversify your economy beyond just tourism and other specific fields. And the few things that we're going to talk about within this is to attract remote workers and perhaps some kind of manufacturing industry. The fourth theme that we highlighted is the expansion of existing marketing strategies. And we understand and appreciate the work that the Woodstock has already done towards marketing its town. And we understand it has a good presence on social media as well. What we are going to talk about is further implementation of the data analysis that could be gained from the traffic on their website, and also to brand the town for specific stakeholders such as corporate retreats and remote workers. And the last theme is essentially effective implementation for economic growth, under which we'll look into like long-term sustainable growth for Woodstock and ensuring that the plans that we are highlighting will be successful in the future.
Hassan, let me just jump in for 1 minute, just because there's a lot of people joined at just before we started. This document is available on the EDC website right now. So you don't have to make furious notes if you don't want to. You can download it there. So go ahead.
Thank you, John.
Right, so here's a quick breakdown of the 5 major themes and how many are implemented by each of the towns. As you can see, nearly all of the towns utilize ideas from one or more of the categories we identified. And despite the differences in population size, they all employed variants of similar ideas under each theme that helped contribute significantly to the success of their development. And the first thing we want to focus on is the small business and entrepreneurial support. One of the most common ideas that came up throughout our research and was brought up during a large majority of our interviews was the idea of a small business support program. Each town had particular characteristics that tailored the program to the specific needs of businesses in their communities, but essentially the goal of this program would be to provide a centralized location for newer and smaller businesses to turn to regarding bureaucratic assistance and available resources and grants. This could come in the form of a specific section on the town website or in a condensed guide that outlines local processes and policies. In response to the COVID pandemic, there can also be help for businesses to start and expand their e-commerce initiatives and to help adjust their websites to online sales. A separate aspect of this idea would be the creation of a program for making connections. Sorry, it's back one slide. A separate aspect of this idea would be the creation of a program for making connections between all the businesses in Woodstock. By connecting newer startups to more established businesses, relationships can be encouraged to be built between them and the more experienced leaders. And that can help the younger ones in navigating the challenges of specifically running a business in Woodstock. In the case of Oxford, Mississippi, they created a branded online portal where businesses and leaders could create profiles and reach out to one another for conversations and meetups. It required a slightly higher initial investment to create the website, but ended up being very successful in helping create an interconnected environment in the town. A smaller scale option to gauge initial interest could appear as a town-led initiative where businesses submit details about themselves and the town can manually connect and introduce them to each other. Next slide. Thank you. A second idea to support the growth of small businesses in Woodstock is to create an entrepreneurship competition to jumpstart the establishment of new businesses in town. Either funded by local private investors or by the town itself, groups can present their business plans and compete to win funding to help start their company. From towns that we talked to, the first place prize could be around 10,000 and second and third place prizes could be around 5,000. To ensure the continued success of the businesses that are formed, particular stipulations can be established. In particular, Wytheville, Virginia required participants to complete a free business course provided by the organizers of the competition in order for them to fully understand what it means to start a business and learn about all the challenges that it comes with. Additionally, judging criteria can be tailored to allow competing groups to showcase their understanding and readiness of starting a business, such as a sustainable business model and concrete plans for growth and development. In Oxford, Mississippi, they included an important criteria that consider the participants' abilities to locate and utilize resources at the local, state, and federal levels. Not only did this help them gain practice, but allowed their town to comprehend what resources were already readily available to new businesses and what needed to be improved. For them, even their last place group was able to use what they prepared for the competition and start a business anyway that continues to operate successfully now.
Another idea regarding small business and entrepreneurial support came up during our conversation with representatives from Douglas, Georgia's Economic Development Council. They mentioned that they had trouble finding a business to occupy a large retail center in the downtown. To fill this vacant space, a private investment group bought the space and renovated it so that it would house 100 to 200 square foot spaces for individual businesses. Quickly, this space was filled up with local businesses that were not able to afford the higher rent of an entire storefront in the downtown, but could afford a 3 to 6 month lease in a micro retail center. This large vacant space reminded us became evident was very similar to the pharmacy building in downtown Woodstock. I think that this would be a viable solution to increase the economy as well as support small business efforts. Furthermore, Paducah, Kentucky, did something to attract artists from the surrounding region by having the private investment group offer 1-year leases for free. Because Woodstock is such a vibrant, high-end retail center, there are lots of businesses in the regional area, and artists included, that would love to have a storefront in Woodstock, but can't because of the higher rent associated with downtown retail centers. By opening up a micro center, you solve this problem by having smaller spaces for artists and businesses to occupy, as well as creating a more vibrant downtown by not having a large vacant storefront.
Thank you, Sam. The second theme that we want to delve into now is downtown revitalization. This theme essentially involves improving the aesthetic environment for the town. And we also want to really appreciate that the town of Woodstock already has a reputation for a quite a beautified town that offers a space for like tourists and tourist attractions. But in our study, we came across multiple towns that they utilized avenues such as community grants and matching grants to further improve the facades and infrastructure for certain buildings, which we thought was essential to retaining tourists that were visiting the town. An added benefit of matching grants actually was the fact that the town had actual money invested within the facade improvement meant that the town can now dictate how that money is being utilized towards improving the facades. Some of the other ways in which we found some multiple towns improve their aesthetic quality of the town and environment was through working into brickwork sidewalks, pedestrian lighting, landscaping, and brick archways, which is like few of the multiple options that are available to improve aesthetic improvement. Lastly, we also found in our interview with Aiden and several other towns as well, there's an alternative a partnership of opportunity available to partner with like certain private organizations such as Main Street America and Roger Brooks International, who basically help tailor specific strategies for towns to help improve the aesthetic, further leading to downtown revitalization. Now, why is this important? Is because this leads to attracting more tourists within Woodstock and specifically the downtown area. And secondly, it helps retain tourists for a larger period of time within the downtown, which will help increase the economic development of the area. And lastly, it emphasizes the unique nature of Woodstock over other regional towns within Vermont.
Something else that came up in our interview with Aiden, as well as in our interview with Emporia, Kansas, was the fact that events that occur not strictly in the downtown, but say, for example, at Suicide Six or at Billings Farm, won't bring the same proportion of retail dollars that events located specifically in the downtown would. This leads us to recommend that Woodstock should organize more events in the downtown around the holidays or major events that are family friendly. And we emphasize family friendly because we think that it would benefit Woodstock's economy to attract a younger demographic, because younger demographics are in fact associated with greater economic development because of higher labor participation rates, as well as higher saving rates. And keeping with the idea of attracting a younger demographic, we think it would be wise to establish an upscale bar within the Woodstock downtown. We suggest this because, as pointed out in Ida, North Carolina, if a service is not provided in the downtown or in the surrounding proximity to the downtown, then people will leave and take their retail dollars to other neighboring communities. And Woodstock, in fact, actually, Iden found that they were losing up to 9 million retail dollars per year because of lost retail sales. Woodstock, in fact, lacks a downtown bar or brewery, so that money is leaving the town and going into neighboring communities. We also think that establishing a bar downtown would allow the town to market itself more effectively to younger people and make the town more livable for younger people, as oftentimes younger people are in fact active beyond 8 p.m., which is why we consider rethinking and possibly relaxing the strict 10 p.m. curfew in the downtown area. Maybe this starts with pushing it back to 12 p.m. or to 12 a.m. On Fridays and Saturday nights, so that more late night events can occur in the downtown area.
So the third thing we want to elaborate on is diversification. We found that a successful concept that was frequently brought up was diversification in a town's economy and initiatives. In the case of Woodstock, in addition to bolstering tourism, which is already a strong point for the town, it would be viable to look towards attracting more remote workers into the area. To this end, we found several relevant instances of what worked well in other towns. First would be the creation of a physical workspace that would simultaneously help out new startups and remote workers. This would be in addition to the space for remote workers that Woodstock currently has, and would include discounted rents to allow for larger offices equipped for longer-term startups to establish their roots and begin their development. Variants of this idea in towns we talked to were funded by the town, who could partially subsidize the lower rent for startups from earnings from the temporary workspaces offered to individual remote workers. Next slide, please. Thank you. And further ideas to attract remote workers would be to expand and reinforce the fiber optic network of the town. A strong network that can handle many requests and spikes in usage is essential to attracting and retaining people in a particular area. So by strengthening Woodstock's current system downtown, it can allow for more and longer visits there. Remote workers in particular rely heavily on a strong connection to remain connected to their jobs. So the implementation of this can be a particular strong point to market as well. Subsequently, a strong network would allow for the possibility of establishing free Wi-Fi hotspots in or around the downtown that would give people the opportunity to stay a little longer and contribute to a more lively downtown atmosphere. Another way to appeal to remote workers is to create programs that would give them support in finding relocation incentives at either the state or other levels to encourage them to move to Woodstock. For instance, Vermont has a relocation program that the town could help people interested in Woodstock find and apply to. Oxford, Mississippi in particular, also found recent success in collaborating with an organization that reviews resumes and helps people with finding remote jobs that they can do online. By providing free memberships to the program, workers were more likely to consider their town as a destination.
Another avenue of diversification that we pursued was industry. In numerous case studies and interviews, we found that towns were increasing their economic potential by attracting regional industries into their area. We think that industries that are committed to keeping manufacturing plants in Vermont could be a great way to add a significant amount of jobs into the Woodstock area. Think of companies like Darn Tough Socks or the various microbreweries that inhabit Vermont. We think that we could attract these kind of industries by emphasizing Woodstock's favorable geographic location on Route 4, I-89, and I-91, as well as the town would be able to incentivize industries to come into the town by offering free or reduced price land that the town owns. To increase the likelihood of a company selecting Woodstock as a place for their manufacturing, we think that we should increase the skilled labor population in the Woodstock regional area. We would recommend that you do this by creating a skilled training course at your local community college.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. This leads on to like the fourth theme, which is essentially expanding existing marketing strategies. The first and most importantly within this category, in our interview with Owatonna, it was highlighted that their town was essentially leveraging their personal connections to brand and market the town as a retreat or a conference place for the corporate industry. And we feel like Woodstock already has the existing structure for that. It already has like Woodstock Inn and like other lodgings and other facilities. So what we feel can be further expanded upon is perhaps specific targeted marketing towards these stakeholders. Another stakeholder that we think should be further targeted is attracting remote workers. As we initially highlighted in our previous theme, remote, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic, attracting remote workers is a huge viable option for diversifying the town's economy. And we feel like specifically targeting them in marketing strategies can help retain a lot more people coming to the town. And lastly, we also understand that the town is already conducting data analysis through the traffic that is being monitored on their website. And town already has a good reputation and following on the social media as well. What we think perhaps could be further expanded upon, and what we found out in our interviews as well, is implementation of marketing strategies that are essentially based on the analysis of the data that has been conducted. For example, if the town can understand and can see that there is a huge influx of visitors on the outdoor recreation section of their website, perhaps the town can then start an online campaign on social media that promotes and brands the town as a lucrative spot for people looking towards outdoor recreation opportunities. And we feel like that could further lead into the economic development for the town. And the last theme that we highlighted in our study is essentially effective implementation for economic growth. What this means is, given the things that we came across, given the solutions that we came across multiple case studies and across multiple towns, we feel like some of these principles were extensively highlighted by the people we were interviewing and emphasized upon because they're quite important for sustainable long-term economic growth of a town. And first and foremost, which was highlighted, was the engagement of the community. And this could be done through multiple ways, such as weekly newsletters, monthly community meetings with local leaders. And we feel like it is essential for any plan to succeed. And essentially, if any plan has to succeed in terms of economic development, the community needs to be actively supporting and backing that plan, and understanding the benefits that could be reaped out of that particular plan. Second theme that was quite highlighted in our interviews was an effort to collaborate between different government entities for the town and establish an effective communication network. For example, in our interview with Owatonna, it was highlighted that they conduct weekly meetings within each with all of the departments interconnected, which essentially helps them understand A, the problems each department might be facing, and B, to highlight the amazing work that the other departments might be doing, which we feel is like an incentive for people to further work upon. A third tier that we came across within effective implementation was to coordinate regionally. And this we feel can be super important, especially given if the town pursues activities such as manufacturing or other bigger projects that we feel like can be better done or better executed, given the nature of coordinating with other towns in the region and pooling the resources together.
It's also important to understand and know if an economic development initiative is working. To do this, it's important to contextualize growth, both in the past, to Woodstock in the past, as well as to contemporary cities across the United States that share similar size and demographic similarities to Woodstock. For example, if Woodstock's economy is growing by 1.5% year to year, sure, it's great, it's growing. But if the national average is 3% and Emporia, Kansas is growing at 2.5%, we then know that we're falling further and further behind, and that maybe our initiatives are not working and we should pivot away from a specific plan to another. On the next slide, you can see an example of some metrics to track, both in Woodstock in the present to compare to the past, as well as in similar towns across the United States. These include county population, total job growth, total assessed value of the county, median annual wage, personal per capita income, retail sales growth, as well as labor participation rate.
Yeah, and essentially these are the main ideas under each theme that we came across, and we feel like are quite essential. We're quite essential in our research that we wanted to present it in today's presentation. And I think it's like we can start the Q&A session, and I'll hand it over to John.
All right, fantastic. I don't know how you guys managed to get that done in exactly 30 minutes, but you did. Congratulations to that. We have more people than we thought. So actually, Hassan, can you stop, maybe stop sharing your screen if you have to read, oh, no, sorry, maybe, no, maybe leave it up there, sorry. Just in case so people can see that. You all can make the people side bigger if you wanna move the slider over. I think there's more people. So if you want to use the raise your hand button, which is under reactions at the bottom of the screen where it says reactions, or if you've got your camera on and you want to raise your hand, wave, I can see you. Kareem, I think you've got a question. I'll start with you. And then others, if you want to raise your hand and you don't have your camera on, I'll just look at the list and call on you. Kareem, go. We've got, half an hour, 45 minutes. So feel free to ask these guys questions or make comments or whatever you'd like. Kareem, go ahead.
Great, thanks, John. Hi, everyone, and I will be hopping off to the village trustees meeting later. But this was great, by the way. I think you guys did an incredible amount of work here, and there's a lot of detail. I was particularly interested by the part where you talk about metrics, and that is something that perhaps at some point, the EDC can use that as measures of success. Since the EDC has been in place for now 5 or 6 years. So I think at some point we might want to think about that. So that's really well done. I do have 2 questions. Actually one question and the request more. All those towns that you have selected, are they all set up with something that looks like the EDC, i.e. a formal organization that is supposed to promote growth? Or are some of those initiatives driven directly by the town management? Let's call it like that. So that's one question. And then a request: would it be possible, if you guys are okay with it, and if John and the EDC is okay with it, to share a little bit more, dig a little bit more into the criteria that you use to actually select those 16 towns? Because I believe that we can use perhaps either that or a subgroup of those towns for additional benchmarking studies we're looking to do at some point to compare, for example, expense level in certain areas, et cetera, and compare them to those towns. So if you would be willing to share some of that, I'd be very interested in looking at this. So that's a request. And my question is, do a lot of those towns have something that looks like the EDC?
So the vast majority of the towns that we conducted research on did have some sort of formal economic development council, whether that was based locally or regionally. They did have some sort of development council apart from specifically the town managers or mayor. Regarding the second question or request, we identified the towns by economy. So we looked at whether or not they are dependent solely on one avenue of or revenue stream, like Woodstock is mainly with tourism. And we also looked at similar location and demographic features.
Okay, and if you would be willing to share some of that data, and you're comfortable doing that, I'd love to take a look at it. With John's okay, of course.
Yeah, no, we're happy to have them share. I'm sensitive to the fact that they actually have to go back to school tomorrow morning, which is why we scheduled this tonight. But they are pulling together. I think Hassan, you said you'd have it for us in about a week. They're going to pull together a kind of a background pack that includes all of the materials that they worked on. So that may help answer the question briefly.
Thank you.
Phil Brown, I think, has a question. Phil, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, John. I had a question for you, a couple of questions really related to the bar downtown idea. I do think you're dead on with that. I go down with my wife frequently for dinner, and you walk out after dinner at 9 o'clock and everything is dead. And I'm sure young people don't like that, but older people like us don't like it either. And so I had two questions for you, if I could. One is the bar concept a freestanding bar, or you're thinking of adding bars to restaurants and expanding them so there's kind of more of a buzz in the restaurants? And second, and related, if you're going to expand the time for bars, would you think it's also important to have things for people to do other than just drink? And so when I think of that, I think of restaurants, instead of closing at 9, they close at 11 or something like that. Any thoughts on both those points?
Yeah, so I think that if we were able to establish at least one bar in the downtown, it would be very apparent, just given how successful that we think it would be, that other restaurants would then notice this example and then follow suit. So we think that by establishing at first a bar or some combination of bar or restaurant that really provides high quality food and alcohol to the community would beget more of a nightlife scene in the downtown. And by nightlife, I truly just mean restaurants being open later than 8 p.m. because it doesn't look as though there are any.
Okay, thank you.
Patrick Foltz, and if you want to raise your hand, it's under the reactions button at the bottom of your screen. Patrick, can't see you.
My question is, in the research and talking to the different towns, did you get into specifics about what types of marketing they were doing besides, social media? Did they talk about any type of efforts beyond that?
Yeah, so this was not specifically mentioned in the interviews, but this was mentioned in our internet. This we found out in our internet research and the academic journals we came across. It is either social media, which is predominantly today's marketing strategies are being done, or there's also a way to do specific targeted campaign through emails. And one of the ways which is done is there's a MailChimp organization. You can have a contract with them, and they allow you to if you have access to emails, they allow you to do specific targeted campaign to a demographic or a specific stakeholder. So those were like the essential strategies that were being involved. And I feel like social media is like, it's easy to say social media in a word, but I feel like it involves so much of marketing. Like it's like quite a complex thing. So we feel like if like truly like explored, that is like quite a good strategy to employ.
I run a creative agency, so I agree with that.
Uh,
I was just curious if there was any other initiatives besides, I kind of almost put email with social media. Were there other efforts that they spoke about, or was it pretty much email and social media?
I mean, it was pretty much email, social media, and in the case of Owatonna, it was using personal connections as well to attracting like businesses for conferences. That was what we came across.
Okay, thank you.
To answer your point, Hassan, actually, sorry, one moment.
Go ahead, April.
Yeah, to answer your point, there was also a couple of towns where they had like specific events, organized like annual events that was targeted towards like a specific smaller sub community, such as like bike riding or bike racing in a particular town. And they would have press releases covering that, like from people who from a larger areas would come in, and from further areas would come in, and they would have press releases that cover that, and that would just draw in attention naturally.
Yeah, that was part of my question, because we drive traffic from New York, Connecticut, Boston, and as well as other states. So I was just curious, how towns were handling that. All right, thank you.
Hassan, I think where people aren't really referring necessarily to the slide, so maybe you can stop sharing for a minute. If you need to put it back up, you can. Roger Logan has a question.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could speak in any more specifics about what places have done to bring in new residents, especially residents who are looking for an opportunity to work remotely. What kind of marketing they did around that, and what kind of, beyond decent broadband and a co-working space, what kind of specifics did they undertake? Do you have any information on that?
So one of the towns that we talked to, it's Oxford, Mississippi. One of their more recent drives was just to try to engage people by creating this, by working with this program that gave out advice and kind of like resume advice, essentially for people to find remote jobs online. And then the town collaborated with them by creating a website that would help highlight their program, and that would subsidize some of the membership fees for like a limited number of people who are looking to move into their town. And they essentially advertised it on their website, and anyone who was interested would reach out directly, and they would work closely with the town to just find a way to get a membership and also just to keep up with their progress.
So was that a targeted marketing campaign they did to find people who might be interested in doing remote work in a town like Oxford, or did they just kind of rely on people showing up on the website and being interested?
It was less so of a targeted approach, because it was more of a pilot program essentially. So it was more like people who came on the website.
Okay, thank you.
April, didn't you? Maybe I'm mixing up conversations, but didn't we talk yesterday about financial incentives for people moving there, or was that a different conversation?
I think
it was a different conversation.
We mentioned that there were also incentives by like the state level to like help with relocation.
Okay, but not you didn't find any community. I'm not necessarily in favor of it. I'm just asking you didn't find any communities that were doing what the state of Vermont is doing, where we'll pay you $2,500 or something to move here or something like that.
No, I don't think
okay.
So. I don't recall it.
I think that may have been a conversation with Larry. Sorry. Ivan has a question. Go ahead, Ivan.
Hi. Yeah. So my question is, what kind of businesses participated in the entrepreneurship competitions in the communities you've mentioned, as in retail? Was it restaurants, tech, startups?
So depending on the town, it was varied. In like particular towns, it was like, in a couple of towns, it was more restaurant heavy, and they had a couple of bars that sprung up from it. And then there are other ones, they were more tech heavy, because their town was naturally drawing in more tech related companies, and because they had a university nearby that produced a lot of people who were interested in tech. And they had like a lot of software related companies. So essentially depends on like neighboring interests. And there were others where there was more arts and craft based.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions or comments?
I'll just make a comment. It's Marisa. Thank you, folks. You've done a great job. Regarding some of the new business, and I guess I use the word manufacturing very cautiously because I don't want to suggest a large manufacturing facility, but if there was some kind of specialty food processing, did you come across any of those kinds of small manufacturers that might be well suited to the community that would, bring in tax revenues as well as employment?
Yeah, so in the town of Emporia, Kansas, they capitalized on their regional location near actually cattle farms and attracted a added ag manufacturer that did processed foods as well as pet foods. So I think the takeaway here is to identify what the regional strengths are and then effectively market to attract companies that could benefit from proximity to those regional strong suits.
Mhm. Thank you.
Okay, good. Other questions or comments, suggestions? You guys have done an incredibly efficient job. I'm just want to see there's no hands up yet. Maybe I'll just talk briefly. If there are last questions, feel free to ask them, but I just talk briefly about what the EDC is likely to do about this. And there's a few EDC members on here. If you have other suggestions or comments, or if anyone does, that's fine. Larry mentioned at the beginning the creation of the business environment group. We have, looking at our main priorities, we have a housing group that has given us some recommendations, and we're now going to explore those recommendations. And we have a marketing group that focuses on marketing. And then we've created a business environment group that focuses on, it's 4 things, basically. One is looking at business policies that affect business, whether those are zoning policies or tax policies. And you could see a kind of a policy, that a number of the suggestions would require that the town establish certain policies or incentives to do things. A second, and this relates, Marisa, to your question that you just asked, the second group is going to look at attracting businesses to come to Woodstock, both retail and non-retail. And by thinking about, and Laird Bradley, who's on here, is leading up that group, and they're going to look at trying to identify what types of businesses we should try to attract, and then hopefully to identify actual businesses that, or specific businesses that might operate in New England or might be interested in coming here, and kind of figure out how to kind of communicate with them and approach them. A third is what we're calling downtown revitalization, which is quite similar to what the Williams team was talking about, including facade renovation, reutilization of empty spaces on the second floor, things of that sort. And then the last is looking at ways of leveraging external funding, particularly state funding. Joe DiNatale is leading that group, and Elizabeth Reeves, is leading the downtown revitalization group. Joe is leading the group looking at leveraging funding, and in particular looking at downtown designation, which is a Vermont state initiative which makes certain additional funding available to communities like Woodstock that decide to become designated. And we have some requirements to meet. All of those are just starting up now, but they'll operate in 2021, maybe beyond, but certainly by the end of this year. We hope that they each have sets of recommendations to really leverage economic growth here. And each of those groups will take this list of ideas and filter it for their particular area. And I don't know how many there were, 16 or 17 ideas, to me at least, there's almost all of them deserve analysis and decisions, and maybe we end up doing 5 or 6 of them, with a real focus. And I think that would be terrific. All right, there's a couple, we have time for a couple more questions. Paul Jensen, I see, I don't know, I've not met, but welcome, and go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I'm pretty new. My wife and I moved here in June. We're both remote workers. We've got offices downtown on Central Street that we recently moved into. We're in our early 40s, so I feel like both of us are sort of in that demographic. We're expecting our first child in May. So we're a young family, moved to Woodstock for all the reasons that you hear. I thought the presentation was really smart. insightful. A few things that just resonated with me, I feel like, as sort of a target demographic for this. Moving the farmers market on Wednesday to Saturday morning. I love that idea. It's, you know, in the hours that it operates now on Wednesday afternoon, you know, it's tough. You know, we go to work, we go to the gym or something, and we come out, we scramble just to get there and buy something. But Saturday morning, you know, we moved here from Washington, D.C., and our neighborhood was sort of a small village within the residential part of the city, and we had a Saturday morning farmers market. It was awesome. You wake up, you get coffee, you get food, it's much more relaxed. And I think it would make it easier for people to come in from surrounding towns to make it more of a destination. I love the idea of creating networking opportunities for remote workers and entrepreneurs. I think it would be great. I mean, I'm interested in meeting everybody. That would make it really easy. And the idea of keeping open a little bit later, and that idea of a more of a like a high-end bar or upscale bar downtown, I think is also a good idea. One idea, you could make it a very small casual music venue and might support, you know, local musicians. We had one of those in our neighborhood. It never got rowdy or out of control. It was just a really pleasant, sort of relaxed environment. So that's kind of an idea really resonated with me too, among others. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Oh, welcome. That's great. And it's good to hear you are the target demographic, and that's fantastic. Congratulations on your upcoming family too. That's great. Kareem?
Yeah, I do have a follow-up question, actually, just to put things in context. You had mentioned earlier that a number of those towns actually did have an organization similar to the EDC, something formal to drive growth, right? I'm just curious as far as the means at the disposal of those types of organization. Just to give you some background, you know it maybe, I don't know if John or the rest of the team shared that with you, but the EDC on average gets approximately, okay, it depends on the years, around $250,000 to $300,000 as funding to do things or to help others do things. And that money comes from a local option tax that's raised on meals and rooms, right? I'm just curious, in those other towns, do they have, do those organizations have funding? Do they have a budget, etc.? How does that operate, generally speaking?
Yeah, I can answer that. So like I mean, I'm not on top of my head, I don't exactly remember each of the 16 towns, but one of our interviews, Aiden, they specifically highlighted that they had a budget for their EDC, and they utilized that to improve and like provide like community grants and like also like improve facades within the area. And they had a budget somewhere around a 300,000 as well. So that was like a recurring theme as well. And I'm sure Sam and April can also chime into that.
Right.
Yes.
To add, oh, sorry. To add on to that, a lot of the towns I talked with, or that we talked with, initially had like started off their process with like a certain amount that the town invested in, but that they kept acquiring private investors who would help to help contribute money and help build towards their program later on, so that eventually the private investment money would exceed the amount that they needed to put in every year.
Yeah, just adding on to both of those things, I think another source of funding that other EDCs, as opposed from just a tax, were capital campaigns. So they were raising money through members of the community for a specific purpose, whether that was through facade or for facade grants or for other beautification purposes. But an idea to have capital campaigns for community members to contribute to the development of the downtown as an alternative source of funding beyond just the tax that you mentioned.
Thank you.
Ernesto? You're muted.
Hi there. Hi there. I just wanted to add, as another member of the target demographic community, I just relocated with my fiance in September, that when considering these strategies, I think it'd be valuable to, and I don't think anyone is necessarily not doing this, think of them as a seriously consider a mixed, a blended approach. We just relocate because we frequently visited Woodstock and the Upper Valley, initially as tourists, and in visiting, one begins to be able to imagine oneself living in a place. So I think if anyone is sort of thinking it's an either or emphasizing one or the other. I think that that would be a mistake, not to think about not only expanding, the tourist economy, but also, remote workership and small businesses and startups in the area, and trying to envision all of these working together in concert to attract residents and build up the local economy.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great point. And there are several members of the group within the EDC that would, and the chamber that would implement that is the Joint Chamber EDC Marketing Group. And there are several members of that group on the call. And by the way, I think that is very much a belief that that group has and is pursuing, but I think it's worth making sure we don't forget that. Okay, good. Other, Beth?
This is great work. I'm just curious, I want to go back one question ago when you were talking about capital campaigns. So does that mean there was a private 501c3 standalone organization in any of those communities that were doing that kind of fundraising that you found, or was it primarily grants to a municipality?
Yeah, so I would say we came across both. I think some of them were grants to the municipalities from the federal or state level, and then some were capital campaigns put on by the EDC. So whether that was like a brick paver campaign in the downtown, or something along those lines that did produce something for the donors, but put on, yes, by the EDC itself.
Thanks.
I'm just making a quick note of that. All right, other questions or comments? These are good questions, by the way. Okay, Larry, do you want to any closing remarks or comments you want to make?
Well, I think one of the overriding things that I see, and we've been seeing with all this research, is and these towns are all over the country, and yet when you hone down and figure out exactly what they're doing, I think it's remarkable how much these ideas can carry over to and be applied to Woodstock. So I feel encouraged by that. They didn't come up with ideas that everybody's rolling their eyes and saying, well, that will never work. So I'm just as an overview, I'm really encouraged to see that these are successful towns that have success in economic development, and they are doing things that I think interestingly, most of which are at least certainly discussable in a serious way locally. So I was really pleased to see that. And I don't know if I'll have another chance to do this, but what a great job you guys did. I'm really appreciative.
Yeah, thank you very much. I have to close out, but yeah, I agree with everything that Larry just said, and add my thanks as well. I'm sure I'm speaking for lots of people. I will say that when Larry first proposed this idea, I was very much against it, not because of the concept, but because I went to Wesleyan, which is the arch rival, at least in football and basketball, to Williams College. And I couldn't imagine that 3 Williams students could do good work, but it turns out that they can. So I have to adjust my perceptions of our arch enemy at the collegiate level. I think this is terrific. You guys have done great work. And I know you're going back to school, I think tomorrow, right? Or you all travel to Williamstown tomorrow, so roughly. So safe travels. As I said, they will give us the kind of a dump of the materials that they went through and developed in about a week's time, but I don't want to put too much more pressure on them. And the EDC will absolutely take this. I can't promise exactly what we're going to precisely do with it, but the business environment group to which these recommendations are targeted, there's a home for each one of these ideas in one of those 4 subgroups, and plus the marketing group, obviously. And so we'll distribute them and start working on them. And as always, we encourage folks in the community. It's just great for you to just come to these meetings and offer your perspectives and questions and recommendations. And there's always ways for you to get involved. Again, the business environment group is mostly non-EDC people. across the different groups. So encourage you to get involved. You can reach out to anyone that you know on the EDC if you're interested. And then, yeah, great job, everybody. Particularly the Williams folks, you did a really nice job, and we really appreciate it. And we will find a way to show our appreciation, at least in writing, to the school, so that they know how much value you added to us. So, all right, thanks, everybody. Thanks, Larry.
Thanks for everybody.
Yeah, bye-bye.